His real name, which Marissa had to have me tell her a few times when we were putting your name in downstairs. She's like, well, I need the name that's on his license, Dave.
And a most gracious welcome completed. Hi.
Joey Gay, one of the hottest young comics in the scene. Joey is a very... No. We last week we had David Feldman. We've had a lot of.
Are you now telling me that I'm relatively young and hot?
I mean,
this date is going terrible.
Compared to David Feldman, I mean, you're Jennifer fucking Lawrence.
Wow. All right, boy, that made the price of
J-Lo
admission.
2.0.
Our buddy Rob Ryan's going to stop by.
Oh, how exciting!
Very funny guy.
Yes. Will we have a minute and a half of awkward discussion about Rob's name when he arrives?
Probably.
Well, yeah. I mean,
fair
no one.
enough.
No
He's
one
got
believes
two
that's
first names.
Yeah. He
There
sounds
we are.
just
Let's
as ridiculous.
not get it out of the way now. I'm sure he'll
Yeah.
want to weigh in
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah, we'll have to like revamp it when he gets in just to
Yes.
make sure.
You guys
that
will
he
have all
feels-
kinds of fun talking about how you have crazy 7-letter names.
Yeah,
Whoa.
Joey Gay and Rob Ryan.
I'm glad I got off drugs. This is worth it.
this is where the math comes in.
So yeah,
Hooray.
let's blame Storm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's-
we're gonna blame Storm right now.
Are we going to address how we came into this building?
Okay.
As a group?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think if we're going to blame Storm, that's good. That's a good place to begin.
Yeah. So the show's at 7.
Allow me to set the stage, if you don't mind. May I?
Oh, please.
I'll set the table. I'm coming into a building where there is a great deal of security and no need for it. As I pointed out to the young lady who was working behind the desk, back in the day, people just walked into a building, did their business, and left. And now there's some sort of futuristic Buck Rogers turnstile that doesn't work well with human movement. And 1 out of 4 people are getting stopped. And this lady has to reboot the computer. And she's putting in my information. And I am being what I like to call a penis. I am being a penis to her. And the two of us are having a good time laughing. And then Marissa comes in and introduces herself. And we have a small chat. And then Dave, you came in and you were flustered. Flustered, is
yeah,
that a fair
flustered
word?
is fair.
Okay.
I mean, I was screaming and cursing a little, but it was appropriate because I parked I found a meter. I got here early to find a meter because I have to be here 10 minutes before all the parking is free. So I finally found a meter, and I had to pay for the last 10 minutes of it, but there was no meter to pay. Like there's no Muni meter, like those blue boxes that you put your credit card in to get a ticket.
Mm-hmm.
So I went. Usually when that happens, they're like, well, you have to go to the next block. But on the next block, there were none either. So I went to the other block. There was also none, and then I finally found one, but it was for a different set of times, so it was turned off. And I found a traffic cop. I said, oh, what should I do? There's around the block right there. It says I have to pay for parking, or I'm going to get a ticket. And there is no place to pay for parking. And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, I mean, he goes, well, was there any meters on the next block? I was like, no. I ran around like a 3-block radius, and there were literally no open meters within several blocks of it. And he said, oh, I guess you should stay by your car. I was like, this is your job. You're the guy who's going to decide to ticket these people. And I'm showing you there's no way anyone else could either. This is how the French Revolution started. This is how people start breaking down doors and eating the rich.
Right.
Not metaphorically, eating their fucking bodies.
Oh my goodness.
No, it's
That's
how
okay. Let it out.
This is how you end up with revolution. This is what tyranny is. It's telling people you have to do something and then not giving them the ability to do it as a trap.
It's an unreasonable set of circumstances in which a man cannot live in peace.
Yes.
With his car.
Yes. Anyone's car. No one who wants to park on that street is given a fair shake by society.
I agree. Yeah, that's
Ironically-
the game is rigged.
Yes,
as
yes.
our president might say.
Yes.
But you suggest beheadings as a reaction
No.
to a
No,
he
rigged party.
actually
Well,
suggested
French Revolution.
cannibalism. He
Oh.
suggested cannibalism.
You're right. I'm out of line. I apologize.
I was
Let me get you back on board right now.
Thank you.
He He definitely suggested that people are going to begin eating people.
Eating the rich. That is
Yes,
right.
eating the rich.
Not
'Cause
metaphorically
poor
as
people
well.
taste horrible,
Which-
which I think is what he's getting at.
I'm sure they do. Like, you know how they
They
fatten up
taste
animals?
like foie
they'll
gras.
give geese garlic and such.
Yeah.
I was not
The
suggesting
poor are
anything.
just going to taste like really bad fast food. Whereas, you if you are going to eat people, you want those whole food people. Those people
Exactly.
who've been
Those-
going
those
to Whole
organic
Food for years.
people.
Correct.
Because soon the poor are going to start tasting like box government food. Once they start, like they're trying to change the way the SNAP system works so that people can like go to the grocery store and pick their own food, and they want to actually start shipping food to people that are government sanctioned, which is probably going to be expired by the time they get there. Because
Well, no, it's food that can't expire.
it's oh, so like we're just talking Spam and Velveeta.
Which is frightening.
No, they said there will be no meat. So
not even Spam.
I thought I
Right.
did read something about that program where they would be sending canned meats, but that is something that I believe that it's going to be very much like MREs, meals ready
Yeah.
to eat, which are for the military.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is just another giant rope-a-dope hand job where one rich guy has figured out how to get products from another rich guy, and both of them kick back a ton of money their grandchildren can't spend.
Right. Number
Right.
one, the box of food means that you're going to take away business from the local businesses that these people were actually using their food stamps for. So there's no longer going to be all the commerce that comes in the private sector. We're now anti-privatizing. We're taking that out of the local businesses. We're also saying that people aren't going to have a choice of what they eat, which is essentially a punishment. It's saying we don't want to let people enjoy their free food. If you're going to eat free food, you better hate it.
There is a real. I think you're.
That's exactly what it is. It's
I
because
agree with
everything
you.
Trump does is for the purpose of trying to please the people who originally voted for him.
Who are the first 8 rows of wrestling?
Yes.
The first
Right.
8 rows of professional wrestling.
No, you're absolutely wrong. They're the
They're
back.
the last.
They're the back.
Yeah,
I
they're the
see.
last
Okay,
8
correct
rows.
me.
Yeah,
Go
definitely.
ahead, Dave.
The
I'm
front
interested
row,
to hear your
'cause
opinion
I've been on the
this.
front row of wrestling.
Okay.
The front row are the
Do
people
tell.
who have connections.
I see. I know somebody, and he's an idiot.
I was in yes. I was in
Sorry, go ahead.
yes, and I think Trump's fan base is a little bit more WCW than WWF in
Right.
the old terms, because the WCW audience, they actually thought it was real.
Right.
The WWF audience were mostly like children and the parents who knew they were watching a show. WCW were like actual people who kind of thought they might be watching a real fight. And that's what Trump's audience is. People who think wrestling is real.
Right, these WCW people, they're the people who like break fluorescent lights over their head and destroy folding tables
You're thinking
in backyards.
of
Is
that's
that?
ECW.
I see. Okay.
WCW was the Ric Flair side of things. They were the grimier, like how when Hulk Hogan was for kids, WCW was all like it was more about like regular Joes beating the shit out of each other. And then later, after WCW
How sad is this?
Yeah. After WCW stopped existing, ECW sort of filled in that space, and they
Okay.
became like the mainstream version of backyard wrestling.
All right, well-
because WCW,
I was just going to make the point that I think there's a correlation between the lack of empathy for people who seek out stuff like that, where a human being is more than likely really suffering in a pretend conflict and not letting poor people enjoy their food. It's the same lack of empathy. It's the same sad space within a person's mind or soul that, makes us all slow down at car crashes. And it seems to me that his base are people who lack basic empathy. I think
they just lack basic common sense because, his whole campaign was supposed to be about, the forgotten man, the forgotten woman, the opioid crisis.
Correct.
Well, who's more forgotten than the people that are on SNAP and they just voted for a guy that's going to give them food that never expires?
agree.
well, don't forget, a lot of the people who support Trump, particularly the ones in lower income, they are under the impression, I've seen many, many interviews, they truly believe that there are 2 different sets of government assistance for whites and non-whites. They actually believe that non-white people and illegal immigrants are entitled to a completely different set of entitlements than they are. And it's a very bizarre argument. I've seen multiple different people say that. And I don't know where they got that from, but it's clearly
Breitbart.
something that people have been pushing to them. Because I've heard that too many times for it to just be something that some guy just was wrong about. I don't know where they're getting that.
Well, I think that that's also part of what's gone on here, which is this is all just one giant shell game of confusion in which there is no actual shell. Everybody looks at a different cup that's empty, and then when the game's over, he goes, all right, we're going to do it again. Everybody's like, what happened? It's as though the entire country is a teenager with a head wound. Nobody can remember more than a half hour behind them. And we seem to be repeating the same nonsensical news cycle over and over in the same type of obfuscation.
Yeah. Well,
sorry, my head
yeah.
will not allow SAT words.
Well, yeah, I think, yeah, and
Obfuscation!
I'm
fighting my own head on that one. Sorry.
No, I think you're right. What we're seeing is the world becomes more complicated every day because things just get more complex, but people are not getting smarter. So as we get further along, it becomes more and more attractive because what Trump is basically saying to all his people, to everyone, is the world is a scary, complicated place. And I can turn the world into a simple, easy to understand, safe place where I protect you. And all you have to do is believe me when when you know I'm not telling the truth.
And you could do your taxes on a postcard.
Well, yeah, I mean this is Trump's entire philosophy is about selling simplicity to people and make it so attractive that they'll give up their actual objectivity just to believe him. And that's really scary because it's like, the last American Horror Story season was about Trump. And there was one line about it, and the whole thing was just a metaphor for Trump in terms of being a masculinity cult, which is what he is. It's all about taking your hands off the wheel. And Trump lets you take your hand off the wheel. And a lot of people are really scared. A lot of people are terrified. That's what the NRA uses. They use terror. They convince people that there are just hordes of poor people waiting to knock down your door and eat you. I don't know where they get this idea.
Well, you've been yelling it at the beginning of this show. You were mentioning how this parking problem would lead you to cannibalize people in a better in a better financial position.
I was making a warning. Not an endorsement.
Okay.
If I tell you,
see. Now that's clear, you could go back to you. You're right. I'm an idiot.
If I tell you it's gonna rain, put on a raincoat. I'm not saying I hope you get wet. I'm saying,
wow, that is the type of logic that's usually reserved for 70-year-old drunks who won't say I love you.
Nice.
You're out of your mind.
So now, how much of this do you think is Trump being a good salesman versus how much do you think it is that a population has been completely, really just been pounded by like Russian bots and just Russian media that's been kind of telling them that he's telling the truth. The liberals are lying. The liberals are crazy. The liberals are trying to take away their rights. Because to be honest with you, I don't find Trump to be a convincing salesperson. But I would have never thought Trump was a convincing salesperson.
No.
But there are millions upon millions of people in this country that are believing him. And I don't know, are they so dumb that they're just buying all of his snake oil, or have they literally just been hypnotized by Putin?
Well, what Putin did was scare people more and create chaos, and that's the same thing Trump does, because that's how you get people to think less. The more scared people are, the more chaotic, the more distracted they are, the less they think through. I mean, that's why people with substance abuse problems or mental illness are so often Trump fans, because they're barely white knuckling their everyday lives. They don't have the wherewithal to think heavily about anything. They're barely there, and that's his bread and butter.
Or the opposite, which is they are feeling every moment and extrapolating every type of bad scenario from every piece of news they get. They're thinking obsessively. That can also be the weight of mental illness, in which case it would have the same effect. It would be great to have a man who came in and made everything simple and made you feel safe. That's, of course.
Yeah, and there's also the element of Trump's blatant insecurity. He seems like an extremely insecure person, and I think a big part of what people like about him is they see themselves in him, and they see this insecure person just lying and getting away with it, and they think, oh, this is going to protect me when I do this. Because I'm a bullshitter.
Well, sorry.
No, go on.
I believe that they think that they've been bullshitted for so long by the government that it's their turn to bullshit them back. And they think this guy is bullshitting on their behalf, like, hey, we're getting over on the government now. But what they're not bright enough to see, or willing to give up in order to get this feeling is that they're robbing the hen house. That this is just another way for the Trump brand, the Trump family, to make more money.
Right.
I don't think, if you have a gut check, if you ask yourself, regardless of which side of the aisle you're on, what type of political views you have, gut check, you trust the Trump family to love America more than themselves or their brand or business?
No.
And I believe that the average American, even the person who voted for them, knows. They may not say no, but they know.
And that's what's truly scary about this is I think you're right. A lot of these people know exactly what he's doing and know how bad he is at this, but they still want him in power just because they hate us.
Correct.
They want to punish us, and they want to say, these are people who are basically saying, I want Trump to destroy this whole fucking country because that's how much I hate you people. Because at the end of the day, this is about us liberals pissing on what they consider values. And if you boil it down, it's about, I don't care if he lies. I don't care if he destroys the economy. I don't care if he gets us in war. We are fighting for the right for our children to grow up and have same race, opposite sex marriages. That's what this is really about. This is about not raising a gay or trans child who will have an interracial marriage. At the end of the day, as much as they will,
How exhausting.
as much as they think we're calling them bigots, that's what they mean when they say values.
We could fix
What
this
other values are we arguing about?
Oh my goodness, it's suddenly the parking all over again. We could fix this whole country with 2 chemists and a giant vat of MDMA. I think we all just need to spend a weekend listening to fucking music and rolling. Hello?
What's funny is that
I'm
actually,
sorry.
like,
I need to take a
Yeah,
moment
yeah.
to describe the horror in the eyes of everybody in the studio after I said that. I
Well,
think
you
the
know,
listener needs to
it's
know
not a bad
I
idea.
lost everybody in this room.
You know what, though? What you just said is actually not a new idea.
No, I know that.
Yeah.
It's actually
In the
MDMA was made as a marital for an aid for marital counseling.
Yeah, and acid, LSD, was one. There was once a plan to give all the world leaders acid to make them love each other. Which, of course, if you've done acid, you're out of your goddamn mind if you think that people just turn into good people. I've seen what happens when assholes do acid. It doesn't help anything. So, but that was a
It
plan.
makes
They
them
wanted to.
way more entertaining.
They
though.
tried to dose Nixon.
Oh my goodness.
They did.
well, there's some
They tried to
regions-
dose Nixon?
Yeah.
Why are we not writing that screenplay?
That's a good idea. Well, can I tell a really quick story that
No, we're
having
going
to do
to
with
stop you. Of course.
having to do with dosing? There's a really funny story that Hunter Thompson told once, and you never know which things Hunter Thompson is telling the truth about, but he wrote this when he was editor-in-chief of Rolling Stone. He was interviewing Bill Clinton before the election when he was running for president, and Bill had just played the saxophone on the Arsenio Hall show with, what was it, Fleetwood Mac? So some famous musician that Hunter was friends with said, well, he sounded really flat. He had a bad reed. And he gave Hunter a reed to give to Bill Clinton. And he gave him this gift. And he said, here, this is from, I forgot the name, but a very famous musician. He was like, oh my God, thank you so much. And Bill smiled, looked at it, put it in his mouth and blew through it, then took it out of his mouth, looked angry and slammed it on the table and never touched it again. And that's the story. And that's the whole story. And Hunter just says, I have no idea what that was about, why he did that. And then, of course, reading it, you're like, oh, you're Bill Clinton. You're about to be president. Hunter S. Thompson, the most famous acid user in the world, just handed you something meant to be put in your mouth, and you immediately put it in your mouth without washing it. He thought he was getting dosed.
Yeah. Well, like talking about dosing, there are some regions in Japan that are going to start putting lithium in their water supply of their populations.
What?
Yeah, because they did a study and they of different regions of Japan, and they found that the communities that had high lithium levels in their water had less rates of suicide than
Really?
Yeah.
So they already had naturally high lithium rates in the water?
Exactly.
From what?
I maybe their wells. Like I'm not exactly sure why they had a naturally high level of lithium, but then what they decided was that since they had lower like suicide rates in those towns, that they were going to start actually putting like artificial lithium in other towns'
Reservoirs?
water, right? So that they could like lower their rate of suicide in Japan.
Well, that is an amazingly good idea. I'm sure there's nothing can go wrong with forcibly drugging entire swaths of the population.
We have low amounts of like antidepressant drugs in our water now, but it's
I think it might be driving everyone crazy. Yeah.
They say all the water in England has cocaine in it. That there's so much cocaine being done in England that it's gone through people's bodies into everybody's.
I mean, I heard about it being on the dollar, like an all money,
Yes, that's
but like I've
correct as
never
well.
really heard about it like being in like water. Like
Yes,
just like
I want to
Coke had
Google
water.
it because I know I just made a moronically broad statement.
No, I
And
mean,
I would
No,
like,
it's
but
like it's crazy though.
it is.
a lot of things don't get filtered out in water. So like
Yeah.
our water is just loaded with just remnants of drugs that could, look, I know people have never been that sane, but don't they feel a little bit crazier now than literally
You are
ever?
suggesting eating the rich over parking infractions.
I am warning. I am warning
Physician, heal thyself. Hello.
that you will cause the eating of the rich because of these parking tyrannies.
Oh,
is the
what?
word.
Parking.
Yes.
Yeah. Tyranny.
It is tyranny.
We should get together and assign some sort of document against tyranny.
The
Get some-
parking manifesto.
I'm gonna.
Yeah, there we are. I like it.
I'm going to nail my set of rules onto the front of that church. That I parked in front of a church.
I'm sorry. I'm culturally obligated to respond this way. You don't have the balls. You won't do it.
I will find a 14th century church.
Write it on slate. So did you guys hear that Trump said that if he was in Florida that he would have actually like run into the school?
Well, now let's go back to your question about him being a bad salesman and are people fooled? And I think that's just one of those little lies that, like, your daddy will tell you that you know is a lie, but makes you feel better to hear it.
Oh, you
Right.
mean like he's coming home again? Like,
Yeah. Nice.
Yes. And even if there's a weapon in the house, he'll probably run in.
But I do think that a lot of his fans know he's lying. But like I said, they just think he has to lie.
Well-
Nothing's fair. Everything's on. That's
I
the thing.
think
Every
you-
right wing person thinks that the world is stacked against them and
Right.
they're the big victim. And so they have to lie. They have to do all this bullshit.
I think one of the most underrated aspects of where we are right now, the only person I've seen mention it at all is Bill Maher, and I've been talking about it to everybody who will listen, and that is the chemical component to our society right now. Grandma and 19-year-olds are doing the same drugs.
Yes.
Right.
Everybody's high on something. I
That
went to the
rapper,
doctor.
Lil Pump. He's always talking
Right.
about doing drugs with his grandma.
Him and Grandma take meds.
Yeah.
His lean costs more than your ring.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hello.
That's true.
But we are a culture where grandma is on some heavy narcotics at the moment. And I think that plays into it. I think if you're so high off your ass at the opioids we're ripping out of the Middle East after a couple of wars.
no, and I think that brings up like a valid point. Like I think instead of like gerrymandering, like I think that we should start drug testing at the voting polls. Like why
Hey,
should
you slow that.
like
right. Hold on. Hello.
like honestly, like instead of an ID, I'd rather not have an ID and like have a piss test because
Well,
like
what
why
Are
drugs-
you
should we-
mad, woman?
Wait. What drugs are you saying would disqualify you
this is a good question.
from voting?
And I didn't ask
I would
it.
say opioids and psychedelics.
Well, I mean, how many people are on opioids that aren't, addicts, though?
We went from them
well,
trying
why
to...
should they vote then?
And also, if you go to vote on acid, I don't think that means you're going to make a bad decision. Because you probably decided who you're going to vote for sober.
You probably think you're voting for God at that point.
You've never done acid. You don't know.
No, you haven't done
No,
this.
I
yet.
have not.
Yeah, no,
We
no,
know.
no. Trust me, I
yeah.
can easily vote on acid.
So could I.
I mean,
yes.
if you have to take the day off to vote, you might as well do acid. It's.
That's... We should make a pin.
I would say just meth. I would say I don't want people on meth to vote.
What about bath salts?
You know what?
Do you
I
know
don't want to
how
judge
hard
them.
it is to retroactively fix the legislation to make all this stuff illegal over and over again? They change one chemical component of a designer drug, and what was illegal yesterday is now legal.
That's true. Like,
Can't keep up with that. Drug testing people for voting, that's along the same lines as drug testing people for food stamps. I feel like it's a basic human right. It's one of the tenets of our society. It shouldn't really be about whether
But like
you're on
someone,
drugs or not.
if you were in jail, especially in Florida, if you had ever been in jail, you're not allowed to vote, and a lot of people,
yes.
a lot of people that are on drugs are committing a crime, so
Yes.
they just have not been caught, so they're not in jail. So why should they be allowed to fuck everything up because they're on drugs?
If you think that criminals are fucking everything up, you couldn't be more mistaken. The person who has the average conviction, right? The person who's done 30, 60, 90 days in jail, the average person in America who's been incarcerated, who isn't a career criminal, shares our political views. Shares our political views. The people we have to worry about are the people who are committing these huge frauds, these financial frauds.
Right.
They're the people who are involved in hijacking our government.
Yeah,
really,
you know who worries me? The people who think that no one who smokes weed is a good person, like Jeff
Right,
Sessions.
correct.
Like that's a much scarier idea because those are the kind of like authoritarians who they don't really care about drug use. They just look for any excuse to lord over someone else.
well, he's just trying to distract from his like Filipino lady boys, but.
Jeff Sessions?
do tell.
What?
Hold on.
I mean-
Can we have a breaking
what?
news sound effect, please?
Oh, no. I mean, I just think that with the opioid crisis, like we need to kind of pick a lane in this. And when we had the crack epidemic in the 80s in the inner cities, anybody that was on drugs, on heroin, on crack, they were a criminal. They went to jail. Now all of a sudden you got grandmas and prom queens that are on opioids. Now they have a disease.
That's correct.
As a country, we need to pick a lane. And right now I'm feeling like if in the 80s, if you were a single mom living in the projects and you needed to go to jail, then if you're a grandma living in a trailer in the Rust Belt, then you need to go to jail.
I feel like we should go the opposite direction.
So do I. I feel like we should learn from the mistakes of our history. I think that what
So
happened
what are you
during
going to
that
do with
time,
all the people that were in jail for drugs?
We should let them out.
Correct.
And then
I
they
think
can
that,
sue all the municipalities, and then
No,
everyone is
well,
going to be
hold
bankrupt.
on.
We don't have
Let's
to give them that
tackle
right.
one problem at a time. And before we get to how litigious we are and that everybody will sue everybody, let's start with the fact that these people who went in as nonviolent drug offenders now have lived in a system in which you need to stab other people not to be victimized.
Yeah.
Right.
So we have all these people who are not violent, which is basically a health issue. Addiction is a health issue in my mind, okay? And so we have these people who've now, they've become criminals as a byproduct of the punishment our society has doled out for what is effectively a health issue. So repeating that process, regardless of how social structure or race plays into it, is just stupid. And I don't want anybody to suffer, regardless of the color of their skin or how much money they make. Drugs is a problem for people, and it's a disease the same way that cancer is. And, you know, I've heard all the arguments, but there are people who just can't stop this march to the grave being sped up by placing things in their body. And I think that we get back to what I was talking about earlier, which is empathy. How do you not feel for that person? Have you never been out of control? Have you never been addicted to something? Have you never been involved in a behavior that repeats, that is unhealthy for you, that you can't seem to stop? I think
Dating.
But I also think
Fair enough. Yeah, there you go.
I think there is an unfair kind of stigma that people have about drug users, that they think that they are all violent. That's kind of an 80s throwback idea that, you know, from the Just Say No, that crackheads were just going around stabbing people for crack. And you know what? If you are a drug addict who doesn't hurt anyone, I really don't have a problem with you. And it's not like the people who use heroin or crack have these exponentially high rates of crime. It's not that on that level. Crime is more about necessity, and it's about like the person more than, you know, being high. I mean, yeah, there are people stealing, but it's mostly stealing. There used to be these 80s stories about crackheads running around just stabbing grandmas, and it really was almost always exaggerated. And you know, and that's the thing. If you, I don't think drugs should be illegal.
Right.
I don't think everyone should be on drugs, but I don't see how making them illegal really helps anything. It's the same thing with any victimless crime. You're just helping the underworld who's going. It's just like with prostitution. If you legalize prostitution, you'd have the same number of prostitutes, just no pimps.
Right.
And it's the same sort of thing. I don't think we should be demonizing drug users, except meth, because they're more Republican.
I don't have on the surface, I don't have a problem with drugs or drug users, but I think that if you're going to legalize it, you should just make it have a luxury tax and use that money to pay for things. But my real problem is that if you start deciding that now going forward that drug users have a disease and that we need to be empathetic towards them, then anyone that has been put in jail for using drugs, the same offense, needs to now be released. And to your point, now these people have been conditioned to be criminals because they needed to do that in order to survive. And as a society, we put that upon them, and we need to make them whole in some sense. And how do you make them whole? Well, normally you make someone whole financially. So now all of our money is going to be basically being doled out.
You're jumping to a gigantic conclusion. That would never happen. We're not going to hand over money to these people. We're going to release them from prison.
I think before we get caught up in the
Because
minutia,
we already have multiple states where this did happen, where we legalized marijuana, but we didn't give millions of dollars to everyone who went to jail for marijuana.
I think that we're going to start seeing it, and I think that if we start seeing people suing the state and suing the government, that and you can't really blame them because you
But
literally
they're not going to get it. The legislature's just going to say you can't sue for that. They already did. That's what happened. Denver's not doing it. So
this show is a good example of what our country is, which is a great many complexities intertwined
right.
that make no sense, that are very difficult one at a time to try and solve rationally. And since they're all intertwined, I think that kind of leads to this feeling of hopelessness for people who are smart enough to grasp everything that's going on. I like to tell people, when people get bent out of shape, I like to say, it's not that you're losing it, it's that you're grasping it. And I feel like that's what's going on right now. I feel like everybody's kind of looking at each little petal on this rose and feeling every thorn.
And also, can I just say something about drugs?
No, let's shut his mic off.
Some people need drugs. Some people need drugs. Here's the dirty little secret about opiates. They're amazing.
Really?
They feel, look, I'm very open. I'm a pothead.
What?
But
Oh, my goodness.
But look, a lot of people have lives that suck.
I'm probably
and they
gonna
want,
sue you
and if
people.
you're not hurting anyone,
A lot
who
of people have
cares?
lives. Are you now making the argument for opiates?
Yes. I'm saying let's have a little sympathy.
But I feel like so now I was in a taxi accident and I had like 3 herniated discs. I'm getting to it.
I
So
see.
I've
Okay.
been
Sorry.
so I went to pain management and I was prescribed a ton of opiates and I was on opiates for almost a year, but I didn't get hooked on them.
Well, let me ask you
And
an important question. Do you still have any? Sorry, go on.
No, and you asked those questions off air. But like that's where I understand we need to be empathetic. So like I understand the needing of opioids. So I'm empathetic in that sense. But I guess I lack sympathy in the sense that when I started feeling like, oh, like I've been on these for a while, I should take myself off. I literally took myself off of them, went to my pain management doctor, and he's like, oh, well, like how many pills are you up to a day? And I'm like, oh, I took myself off of that like 3 weeks ago. And then he's like, oh, you can't take yourself off. You're going to start withdrawing. And I was just like,
Dr. Feelgood's trying to make some more money, huh?
and I was just like, yeah, no, I mean, it was like kind of like a rough like 3 days, but like, yeah, I'm all right. Like, and he did kind of keep like, oh, well, one, like you're gonna like have like pains and you're gonna be like uncomfortable and it's like, like I'm fine without it. So like I kind of feel like, something, life is pain. Like you're not always gonna feel 100%. Like you're gonna have shitty days, you're gonna have better days. Like you don't need the shit 24/7. And I don't know why I need to pay for the fact that you don't know how to stop yourself. Like I mean, that's where I'm at that.
Well, what do you mean by pay for? You mean like with healthcare?
Yeah.
There is a drain, right?
No, yeah, there is a
But-
drain. And we should, no, look,
Very
we
simply,
obviously
let me
should-
ask you, can you not believe that you are stronger than some other people?
No, because I'm an average schmo.
Wow, that's adorable. Your modesty is in the way of my argument.
No, look, of course we should be trying to help a lot of people get off opiates. We have a really big problem that there are too many people who are just relying on their daily OxyContin just to like get through the day because, it's human condition and life sucks.
Well,
But
you've
yes.
made several arguments in favor of opioids, so I'm going to take what you say with a grain of salt. But I think that you make a good point, which is there is a drain on the system. People now, the part of the opioid crisis is this huge drain on the system. But then you have these people who, were introduced to opioids, who are people who wouldn't smoke a joint on the weekend, straight edge people, right?
Right.
Who then end up doing heroin and they're dead. So you have this crazy roller coaster of people who are the pillars of society, the soccer moms, the dad who, owns a construction company. I mean, top to bottom, veterans, the salt of the earth are dying from heroin addiction 18 months after giving people this product. Mm-hmm. I think that's something to be concerned of. And I know that we've kind of talked a little bit cavalierly about drugs. I'm going to make my own views very plain. I think pot should be legal. I think that opioids are, a lot more problematic. I wouldn't be for the legalization of that kind of stuff. I would want people to have to go to a doctor. And I would prefer that the doctors who are able to give you opioids become specialists, that you have to be recommended. This way there's a, 2 doctors have to say, yes, I thought it was a good idea. As opposed to one guy writing you something, now you have another colleague where the 2 of you have this, you have to either collude to agree, right? To give somebody these falsely, or you have to, one of you has to have a sensible opinion. I think it might make it more difficult to have 2 people. But yes, remember?
I was going to say, remember Trump's doctor, was it Bornstein?
Are you talking about the dude who looked like he was a roadie for Jimmy Buffett?
Yes.
Okay.
That I was saying. Whenever I think of like a crooked doctor, I think like the kind of guy who just lives to
He
give
was
out
the
prescriptions.
healthiest president in the history of
Yeah,
presidents.
obviously a crooked doctor who had that. Yeah, he had like that weird like Tiny Tim wig.
Yes.
He had, and the pencil drawing of himself, and his mug was the fake urine sample mug. If you noticed,
I did not notice
his mug
that.
was meant to look like a urine sample
I
of
see.
his coffee mug. Like, yeah, you think of those doctors. It's one thing to have those for weed, where it's just to get medical. That everyone doesn't really care, but yeah, we need to have less doctors willing to just hand out oxys, because I mean the people who make OxyContin, they know that like, hey, according to the number of pills we make, every human being on Earth is taking one of these a day.
Right.
That doesn't sound right.
Right. And I think that, to your point, but I also think that the companies that produce these drugs also need to be held accountable, because they're also kicking back these doctors. And so, like, you'll have, these pharmaceutical reps that are sending these doctors on vacations for how many scripts they write. And then, of course, these doctors are writing these scripts. And there was a small town, I believe in West Virginia, that only had something like 1,200 residents, and they had like over 2 million OxyContin pills or like opioid pills in some ilk. Just because the 3 or 4 doctors that were there were just getting so many kickbacks from the pharmaceutical companies for doling out all of these prescription medications. And I know that I always sound litigious, but the pharmaceutical company needs to be sued. Those doctors need to be sued. And like at the same time, like I understand that these patients trusted their doctor, but doctors are human and they're also greedy. Like there's got to be a point where you're accountable for your own life and you're like, oh, something, this does not sound like a good idea. I shouldn't be doing this.
Marissa, you are just better prepared to deal with the ebb and flow of life and personal responsibility than most. There are a lot of people out there that are much, much weaker than you, which I guess this is an odd compliment in that you are strong. And I think that gets in the way of you seeing some people for what they are, which is just frail and flawed.
By the way, if you're ever in a doctor's office, here's a fun game. Ask for a pen. If you go to your doctor's office, ask for a pen that doesn't have a pharmaceutical drug on it.
Yeah.
Well,
Find a pen without Abilify on it.
if we're going to discuss that also, then we need to discuss that. It's not just the doctors getting kicked back, it's the politicians.
Right.
It's the real problem with
The
everything
lobbyists.
we've discussed all day long is the money in politics, corporate money going into politics. And it's not even lobbyists. I think it's the Senate. They spend 2/3 of their time calling to raise money for whichever political party they're part of. 2/3 of their time, the Senate is not working on any government business. They're just trying to get more money to fuck the other guy. I'm my synapses are clogged. We can solve 80% of the big picture problems by just ripping that money out, not having anybody, any corporation be able to put money into the United States, have all public money.
Publicly funded campaigns.
Correct.
Yeah.
And people
Everyone
are like,
gets
well,
the
where's
same
the money
amount.
coming from? Corporate welfare. We end corporate welfare tomorrow. If you own a corporation that we subsidize, now it's time for that free market you Republicans like to talk about so much.
Honestly, the amount of money it would cost to pay for the campaign, it wouldn't be that much. It really wouldn't be, because we're just
Let
talking
'em
about
go
some
now.
airtime. We're talking about some places. The money to run, we don't need to spend the amount of ad time that we spend on these elections. Other countries do this. The amount of money that it would cost to publicly fund these campaigns would be made up so fast in just how much less corruption there would be. It's ridiculous.
I agree. And what we have here is a system of legitimized graft,
Right.
Yeah.
where corporations give money to politicians to shape legislation to sell us more bullshit. And that's the reason why there are guns in the classroom. It's the reason why Little Pump and his grandma are both snorting the same opiates. It's the reason your politician can't vote his conscience.
It's the reason the NRA has a stranglehold
Correct.
on the
It's all-
Republican Party, even though nobody actually agrees with them.
Correct.
Because they have enough money to buy these, and because the fact that the difference is the tiny number of people who are staunch NRA voters do not care about any issue except for their guns.
Correct. It's a very, very odd thing to me. I cannot imagine a life where I would rather have a rifle in my house than save children.
No, it's true, and especially like the Republican Party is always kind of like, you know, family values, and you
It's
have to
horseshit.
make children safe, and like, you know, like I understand the Second Amendment and constitutional rights, but the Constitution said you could have a musket, so no one's saying you can't have a musket.
Anybody who is holding on to this argument of fighting the government over tyranny should really research some of the weaponry we've been putting money. If you think your AR-15 is going to fight off the drone strikes, the government, you're going to fight the government with the rifle you got at Kmart. This is just not a rational or reasonable person's argument.
Yeah, if you believe...
I just riled you up. I see that again.
No, yeah, if you
you're about to
believe-
yell at me about eating people, aren't you?
If
Go
you
ahead.
believe that you have a constitutional right to the AR-15 because of the right to bear arms, it means you also believe you have a right to those drones. It means you also believe you have the right to Tomahawk missiles and Apache helicopters, because they
All
said
right,
the right
now
to bear...
maybe I'm on your side. I
They
can
said-
have an Apache helicopter.
They said the right to bear arms.
Right.
That included artillery. It included any weapon
How
that
many
existed because you were
lists
supposed
do
to
you
be able to
wanna
fight
get
the
on?
government. So the point is, when they talk about, well, we have a right to those weapons, they're being liars and hypocrites, because if they really believed that, they would believe that they had the right to
Nobody-
nuclear weapons.
That's
There
kind of-
is always a degree, and we're just arguing about where. It's like the old joke about, like, would you have sex for $50? Would you have sex with me for $100,000? The woman says yes. What about $50? She says, what do you think I am? He goes, we already know what you are. Now we're just negotiating price. It's the same thing with guns. It's like you know there's got to be a limit to the weapons you have. You just want the AR-15.
Well, I think it all gets back to we're willing to lie to get what we want. And is that a byproduct of us watching politicians do that and feeling cheated from our own country, our own system of government?
But another thing I don't understand is, like, you know, like kind of to your point where we're saying that like the NRA is like so like Republicans are so pro NRA, but like why are you okay with giving weapons to all these people that don't believe in the government, that are basically want to believe in anarchy? Like, you're giving all of these weapons to militias that want to fight the government, but then you're fighting for the right for these people that want to kill government to have weapons.
Actually, I can answer that for you, because you said the words, why are we giving these weapons? We're not giving, we're selling. And that's why. Because of the money that the gun manufacturers and then the NRA in turn make from them buying those weapons.
It's
But
a
isn't
shared
like Smith and Wesson, like Smith
and
and
Wesson.
Wesson, like aren't they going out of business? Like they filed for bankruptcy. So like how much money are these like gun companies actually making if you're like one of the oldest ones
Oh, it's
is
a big
going out of
profession.
business?
Oh, Smith and Wesson aren't even really the problem. They wanted to have guns that only the buyer could use, and would have special smart guns that you have to fingerprint, and it was the NRA that stopped them from having those kind of protections. The Smith and Wesson would be fine with whatever regulations came down. It's the NRA that's stopping them. they're the ones who are now saying, "How dare you say 18-year-olds can't buy assault rifles in Florida now?"
It's not really the National Rifle Association. It is the propaganda arm of the manufacturers of guns in America. There are 5 million people who are registered or supposedly NRA members. And I keep reading online and in the newspaper people saying, they keep sending me this stuff. I've never sent them a check. I've never said I'm an NRA member. So those membership rolls are probably really, really inflated for the sense that they want people to believe there are many more people in a grassroots movement on the ground. But that's part of the game.
So they're like Russian troll bots.
Well, yes, but I think we fall into a trap when we say Russian, 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 Russian. I believe what happened with I believe that there was Russian influence and is okay.
Yeah.
So, but I think that also once we make it this one person we have to look out for, there are thousands of other interests that go unchecked.
Yeah.
It's not just the Russians. It's the people selling you Tide. It's the people. Absolutely every corner of this globe is scrapping for information about you to rip every last penny out of you or get your vote. It's the Matrix, and the fuel is our votes and our money.
It is amazing how, like, now every time you look up and you buy anything online and then you have to see that thing in your ads every goddamn second you're
very
online
odd.
now.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just bought it. I don't need it anymore. Like, I'm not, like, I literally looked up, like, the price of a coin to see, like, what some old coins were worth, and now I can't turn on my computer
Right.
without just, like, banner ads everywhere of, like, liquidate your coins. What are you doing with those coins?
I am now going to Google ladyboys from all my straight friends'
Yeah,
computers.
do it. Be nonstop.
Okay.
No, it's a joke that I never actually used in a roast, where I said I looked them up for this to learn information about you, and now I constantly get ads for pepper spray and HPV tests.
That's good.
Rob is here and the door
Okay.
is locked.
Okay.
Is anyone downstairs?
No, downstairs they seem to have things well in hand. I got to
Yeah.
tell you.
Well, we'll take a quick break and
I
look.
think. Am I bailing? Is this it for
No,
me?
no.
Do you want to stay?
Sure. No,
Yeah,
I'd be
no,
more than
absolutely
happy
stay
to.
then.
Thank you.
So, we're gonna take a quick break, you guys. This is Blamestorming. We will be right back. Hey guys, this is Blamestorming. I'm Marissa Smith. We are back with Dave Cyrus,
Yes, I'm Dave Cyrus.
Joey Gay,
Hooray.
and we are joined with Rob Ryan.
I just came here.
Yes, Rob, thanks for coming in. So let's just jump right in. Rob, name 3 celebrities you think are actually innocent of their sex charges.
Ooh.
Oh no, is this the show?
This is the show.
Ah,
We're trying
damn
to
it.
create a buzz, trying to create controversy. Yeah.
You invite a comic and then you just
ruin
their
put him in the
careers.
hot seat.
Yeah. Yes.
We undo them.
I think
You don't have
that-
to answer
no,
the question.
yeah.
don't
You don't
answer.
have
No,
to.
I will. I think the charges laid against you, Dave, are
Thank you.
completely unfounded.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And technically, there are more than 3.
Well
so that,
played.
You did.
Well played.
Yes.
So, Trump recently said that he thought that teachers should be armed in schools. Does anyone think this is a good idea?
No. I don't even like teachers being teachers in schools. You gotta give them guns now. Do you ever hang out with a teacher, like have a friend who becomes a teacher? They start off like the beginning of some Hollywood movie. They're gonna make a connection. 3 years later, they're like, I hope they all kill themselves, these little bastards. They've lost the will to live. They're drinking in the afternoon. These are the people we're arming? It's like you've made people cops and then retroactively given them guns.
The cops didn't go into the school.
No,
yeah,
they
the
didn't.
sheriff's deputy
but-
stood outside like a bitch.
I'll tell you this: you
But
ever
the
been in
history
a
teacher's
situation
supposed
where
to.
you're holding a gun and you're scared? I have.
No.
It's not,
Dude,
well, let me tell you, it's not fun.
Yeah.
It's hard not to have empathy for people who don't want to run at the other guy with the gun, especially if you've been in a situation where you're holding a gun and the other person may be.
Exactly. That's why I don't expect teachers
Yeah,
to.
and now imagine you're an English
yeah,
teacher.
exactly.
Right.
Right.
You've
Or
never dealt with this
even
situation.
worse, imagine you're a cop and you find this out, in the middle of a 8-hour day where somebody's killing children.
Or a cop comes to the school, there's a school shooter, and there's 5 teachers with guns also shooting.
Correct. There's no.
That's
but
gonna
then
get
again,
nuts.
this is just yet another in a long line of red herrings from a lunatic, cartoon villain
Trump. Yeah.
who is living in the White House at the moment.
Right. I mean, he's just saying this off the top of his head. He's now saying we're going to go to war with the NRA because he says whatever he thinks makes him look strong in the moment with no intention of doing anything about it. Because he is, like I said, where some people are playing chess, he's playing whack-a-mole. He's just in the moment. He's like a dog just living in the second and just trying to not look bad every moment. So he doesn't care because he doesn't think that anyone else is going to remember anything he says tomorrow because he doesn't.
He said he was going to go into the school himself. Did you hear that?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
without a
we
gun.
Yeah, we
talked about
totally
that.
Talked about it earlier about how the man with 5 draft dodging deferments wants us to believe that he would unarmed charge into that. I have
But what
never
happened to his
seen
bone spurs? Like, how
Yes.
would he run in there?
Donald Trump is someone who, if he was in a burning building, would knock an old lady down if he had a half hour to get out of the building. He is the most cartoonishly cowardly human being. A man who has never taken it upon himself to help other people in his life. Wants us to believe that he is this white hat roaming the streets trying to save people. I mean,
But it's a much better story than I'm the average scumbag. I would have hidden. This is not for me. Sounds so much better to go, what
Trump
I
would have
do
yelled
is-
to the shooter, "They're in there."
Start with the kindergarten.
Hey, there's that controversy we were hoping for. Hooray!
And I think that I understand why you want teachers to have guns because you think it evens things out. I think we should have a compromise.
You're nuts.
Let teachers have swords and whips.
I went to Catholic school where I was beaten by teachers as a kid. I do not want these people armed. If there was a time where they were allowed to hurt children, right? Now take that same temperament and I admittedly drove people crazy. As a child, I would take delight out of taking a perfectly reasonable person in a position of authority and then slowly making them insane.
Yeah,
That's the normal thing that happens with the cut up kid at school. Now that person that my nature makes me harass is armed.
Well, I think Trump would even say to that, goes, well, maybe they'll have a little bit more respect for their teachers when they're holding a gun. That's how he thinks.
Yeah.
That is I guarantee you that's the argument that he's going to think that we give more respect. I mean, here's the problem.
Yes, I know,
Once-
because mine makes sense
Yeah. Yes.
and his does not.
Right. If you give teachers guns, you just solve the problem for the school shooter. How do I get a gun?
Right.
Right.
Because once you have the element of surprise and they have a gun, they're not holding that gun like it's Vietnam with their finger on the trigger. They're walking around doing their normal job. Anyone could walk up behind this guy and hit him in the head and take his gun.
Teachers do not have their shit together. I must say that again.
No,
they
teachers,
do not.
we can't stop them from having sex with the kids.
Correct.
Still. So who's to say they're not going to like fool around in the closet when, and hey, check out my gun.
Right.
I do think this would increase teen pregnancy, yes. I think having the teachers hold guns is just going to make them much more likely to have the balls to fuck a kid.
Exactly.
Not to put too fine a point on it. But yeah, I mean, Trump wants teachers to have guns because that is the only argument you could have that doesn't involve gun control. That's all it is.
Right.
This is all retroactive arguments starting from the point of, okay, we need things to be safer and we need to not upset the NRA, not let them sick their goons on us. I want all that sweet NRA money.
Well, didn't he accept like almost $30 million from the NRA for his campaign?
Of course.
Yes.
So, I mean, he can't really step on their dick too much. Like, he's going to say enough to like kind of have people quiet about it, but he's not really going to.
I think it's emotional with the NRA, the way people worship it. I think that there are a lot of angry people who they think of the NRA as like this protector between them and the unwashed hordes that are trying to kill them. And I think that if you made a compromise and just let them add a G between the N and the R, they'd be happy enough to give us some of the things back. Just so they could say it.
Oh, my goodness.
Marissa's black, everyone. I want to make sure everyone listening knows that I can say literally anything because we got a black woman.
I'm not sure this is licensed.
I never agreed with Howard, but I'm suddenly seeing why Howard has Robin. It really opens up my racism.
I see that, yeah.
What does the gun thing look like in a practical sense? If we actually were like, all right, this is going to happen, who gets the guns? Is there
Gym
training?
teachers. We
Gym
start with
teachers?
gym
We start-
teachers.
okay.
They're fucking idiots.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that what they're trying to do is like if you had any person in the school that it used to be like military, it's like a military veteran.
Oh, so it's like when the pilot goes down. Does anybody have flight experience?
Right, and let me
Yeah.
Who
ask you
can
this.
land this
Oh,
plane?
ex-veterans.
I already know the
Expats.
answer.
Who else should have a gun
There's-
around a bunch of horrible children?
There's a bump in pay, isn't there?
It's a bump and pay, probably.
Yeah, so now there's an
Right.
incentive
Right. So
to
now,
have that
right,
gun.
that's right.
And
yeah.
of course, we're also paying teachers less under the new budget. We're taking away all their ability to write off their supplies. So now they need that money. So
Right.
now these teachers really need to carry these guns.
This is
Honestly,
just so sick and perverse.
Yeah.
do you guys remember? Does everyone remember? Let's make it easy. Their senior year English teacher.
yes.
Now picture them holding a gun.
Oh my God.
How do you feel?
Sister Eileen.
He was the worst,
Think about that person, whoever that was,
Mr. Howard.
and just picture them packing heat during that lesson and how that's going to go. Like, I can't, if I think of the people that I went to school with, the number of people I would be comfortable with them having guns. Okay, Mr. Katz in 6th grade is the only one I would have trusted with a gun.
My English teacher in 12th grade was accused of being sexually inappropriate to a kid. Just to round this back again.
Yeah.
Well,
And so we're going to give him a gun.
Well,
it
don't.
goes back to the kitty touching.
And it bears saying the teachers don't want them.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
So let's think about that idea for a moment. You take a person unwilling to have this tool to kill people and require them.
Yeah, because you had like an affinity towards earth science. Now you have to own a gun and fire it off.
You
and-
put those fucking finger paints in that closet, Jerry.
Now, am I a bad person
Yes.
for the fact?
Sorry.
The answer's going to
Done,
be
Next
you're done.
topic.
yeah, the answer is going to be yes, but am I a bad person that I honestly, my attitude is, let's do it. Let's give these
I
teachers
have
I do wanna
their
see
fucking guns,
the world burn.
and I want you to see how many people get shot by teachers now who were not school shot. I want to see
The
how
room is
bad
split,
this
ladies
gets.
and gentlemen.
Yeah,
Two
yeah.
looks of horror, two people very amused.
I want to.
I want to break these eggs to make this omelet of showing everyone how. I mean, just like how I wanted Trump to win the election, I was like, I want you people to see how this is
one's
going to
seeing
play
it.
out. I know
No
that.
one's doing it. It's crazy.
Not yet. We're still in the promises stage of his con. I still firmly believe we're still in only Act 2 of the
Right.
movie that is the Trump administration, and Act 3 is going to just be one long trial. I really, I honestly believe that we are building to the greatest Schadenfreude crescendo in world history. I think that the people who trusted Trump are going to be parables for 1,000 years. I think that the amount that Trump is going to crash and burn at the end of this is going to be so brutally satisfying that I fear a wave of suicides.
Oh my God.
I honestly don't think anything is going to happen to him. I think that you're going to have his flunkies. You're going to have Manafort, Gates. They've already pleaded guilty. Gates is now going to be cooperating with Mueller. I think that those guys are going to do some time, but not crazy amounts of time. They're going to be in some sort of like white collar prison playing golf. And I think that they're just going to go and chalk it up to, this is all the fault of oligarchs and this was just basically money laundering. But I don't think that they're actually going to touch him.
You know what they said the same thing about? John Gotti. Every mafioso was once untouchable. And then people exactly like Robert Mueller, and literally Robert Mueller sometimes,
It was Robert
systematically
Mueller who got Gotti.
Really?
shut
Yes.
these people. Yeah, it was Gotti, right.
Correct.
People like Robert Mueller, and literally Robert Mueller said, there's nothing these people are going to do to me that are going to stop me from doing this. The mafia used to be untouchable, and now they are, they're
to
a
a
shadow of what they were.
Donald Trump is emulating the mafia and has been
Oh,
for a
totally.
very long time. I don't know if you know this, but there was a time in the 1980s when he built Trump Tower in Manhattan. His attorney was Roy Cohn. And Roy Cohn was also House counsel for like 3 out of the 5 mafia families in New York. Fat Tony Salerno and Paul Castellano were both represented by the same man. And at a time where concrete was not being used to make structures,
Shoes.
Donald Trump went and bought concrete from the 2 largest mafia families in America and then put up Trump Tower. At a time where they were not using, I will repeat, were not using these materials. So what happened in that office is Donald Trump sat down with 2 of the most powerful mobsters in America and paid them a tax, in essence, buying materials that were not being used on any other job site in New York in order to put up a skyscraper. What he did was he found the people who were breaking the law. He found the people who were fixing deals between people breaking the law, and then went ahead and planted his flag in the center of Manhattan. It's what he's been doing since he got into business. And now this extends to the White House, where he's operating like some sort of low-level and unimaginative mobster.
He's a
Right.
thug. He
Yes.
acts like a thug because that's about as
Well said,
deeply as he
Joey.
can think this. And by the way, funny story. By today's standards, he would just be Tony Salerno. Everyone's... He'd be regular sized Tony Salerno.
He'd be proportionately
Yeah.
husky,
Yeah.
proportionately husky Salerno.
He'd be the fittest mob boss in the history of the world.
He would.
I mean, I know that happened before we started doing this show, but I mean, I one of the things that disgusted me the most about this country was we can't even call someone a liar when we can see they're lying about their height. Like, everyone act like this. It's so petty to go after Trump when he says he's 239, 6'3". He's not 6'3".
I don't
Right.
know when we became a country that suffers fools gladly.
There's
Yeah.
so many things that politicians lie about that you can't prove. And at the end of the day, you're like, no, I don't know what's going on behind closed doors. But what was so unnerving was when you were lying about something that you could prove. And that was my biggest.
Right.
Politicians lie about lots of stuff. I'm like, not the shit that
I
you
had-
can see.
Right, I had someone
Correct.
say
That's nuts.
Right.
that
Yes.
I was told I am not a doctor, and therefore I cannot
Right,
claim that
okay.
he's not really 6'3".
But here's the thing.
Whoa.
People are willing to say anything, knowing it's not true, to shout at you louder. There has been an absolute absence of reason. We have gotten to a point in this culture where we willingly accept lies, knowing they're lies, and you're the lunatic if you point them out. It's,
Right.
It's fucking bananas.
Alex Rodriguez is 6'3" tall.
You're really hung up on a small one here.
The whole point. Yeah,
The whole
right?
point though, is that it's one where there is absolutely no question that it's true, but they're willing to say it. It's just like with the crowd size. He'll lie about more important things, but when we let him look us in the face and fucking gaslight us
slippery
and say
slope.
this is not real. I am 6'3" and I weigh 239
And as a
pounds.
black woman, that offends me.
Yes. Well, you sound just as much like one of Marissa. No offense. That's why I just I just want to remind people because I need people to know that we're not an all-white show.
Why do you need people to know that?
Because I am a racist, Joey.
Okay, well, as long as we get that out of the way, carry on.
But yeah, no, I mean, look, it's not like it's a motivationless lie. He's obese, and he doesn't want to be obese.
Who?
Trump.
Trump.
So he
He's,
says
like,
he's
borderline
6'3"
morbidly
because that
obese.
makes him overweight and not obese. When he's not 6'3", he's 6 foot, and he's probably way more
He's
than
just used to saying whatever the fuck he wants, and people saying yes.
Right. Yes, sir.
You know,
Speaking of which,
They said Donald Trump this and Donald Trump that, and I said yeah. He's just used to having more money or stature than anybody else in the room in the circles that he traveled in, right? And he would just say whatever the fuck he wanted, and people go, yeah. It was kind of like when a hot girl in high school would say to you, do you remember that time? And you knew she was lying, but she was using you as a tool of her lie. You remember that time? And you just go, yeah. I'm sorry I spit on you, Dave. It wasn't on purpose.
It's no, yeah, I know.
I figured I'd address it.
It's okay.
Can we arm the fucking students?
Now we're talking.
Arm the students.
That's what I want to do.
Just the attractive ones, so that the teachers
That's going to
don't
be
fuck 'em.
interesting dodgeball.
I mean, what about just the ROTC?
or just
The
one
ROTC.
kid, like an air marshal for classes. You don't know who it is. You don't know which student it is. There's just one sleeper student in there.
Right. I mean,
that's a great idea.
Do you want the?
We'll call him the Rob Ryan.
Every school has 21 Jump Street.
That's what. Yeah. So is it a real student or is it just some 35-year-old?
Oh, that's a great sitcom. Just they can't even find ones that look age appropriate. They just,
They just one in the middle.
just
of the
get these
class.
old ass guys, and they just every single one. It's like, please don't fuck the kids. Please, pretty please.
That seems to be the problem with every idea here. Is they'll fuck the kids.
They will.
They'll
They're
fuck
gonna
the
fuck the
kids.
kids.
It's a big enough
More
problem
guns
already.
down.
I mean, I remember 5 years ago that the NRA, instead of arming teachers, they were saying that there should be armed volunteers walking through the schools.
I don't know if you
like they're not gonna fuck the kids.
Wow. Oh my. I'm gonna have a cookie and just let you go.
Well, with all these guns, no teacher's gonna do lunch duty. That's gonna be a big issue.
No, that's true. Like I went to an all girls private school, and there was this girl in my class that her father was like a counselor to Columbia, and so she literally had an armed guard, and so they wouldn't let him in the classrooms, but like he would sit in the lobby, and it was just like literally just sitting there all day, like just sitting in the lobby, and you're just like, oh, who's that guy? Oh, that's Maria's bodyguard. And like she'd come to school in like a limo every day, but it was just strange and being in an all-girl school, like having just a guard just sitting there, but like he never did anything. Like if there was like fights, like we'd have schools that would like come and like fight us, and like he would just sit there. It was just like he never like got, hey kids, stop this, or like there'd be like weave tracks everywhere, skirts, clothes everywhere, and he'd just sit there, and it was just like, you know.
Did he fuck the children?
He didn't fuck me. I can't speak for all the children. I found his unibrow untasteful.
I see. So it's really a personal grooming matter.
Yeah.
I've learned so much here today from you guys.
That you blew your chance of being a teacher.
Yeah, and the joke here was, as long as he doesn't fuck the children, you don't need to stop them from killing each other. I think that
Not just
that's
the male
the
pro.
resource. They keep saying he was a resource officer at Parkland.
I thought he was like a
a
deputy.
deputy.
He is,
Could be
but a
both.
resource officer is a guy who is assigned to a school.
Okay.
So if you go to a resource room and you're in trouble, if they need a law, somebody to liaison with a law enforcement, this is the drunken failure.
Yeah, that's the problem. The
I was paying
perfect solution
$75,000 a year doing it.
was in place.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, $75,000
In
a year.
Florida.
And he didn't even go into the school. Like, I don't know.
I want to err on the side of caution, like emasculating this poor bastard, because I can only imagine that he is spending his life in the bottom of a bottle right now.
He's a bitch, Joey.
My goodness.
Oh God.
How does taking that stance make you feel better? Because that is the only reason you could do it. You don't know the man. Like for me, I'd rather just think this poor bastard is hurting himself enough, right?
Oh no, I don't have much of a problem with the person as a person. I just think it's a good example of like, see, this is what human beings act like in this situation, and this is why.
You never know how you're going to react. I've been in a lot of crazy situations.
I'm going to say right
Sometimes
now,
I
one
surprise myself.
person going in with a pistol to a guy with an AR, that's not not a
crazy.
reasonable.
No.
That's not even what the police would do.
With a
No.
crowded.
The police would come in and say, "We're waiting for backup," because that is insane to go up against a guy who's
Right.
armed like a military.
Well, it's a shame the president wasn't there, because
yet
if he had a pistol,
Right.
that is more than he had.
he said he'd go in unarmed.
At the
That's
same
correct.
time, I see
Yeah.
all these gun advocates saying that a pistol and an AR-15 are exactly as deadly as each other because they
right.
both are
Well-
semi-automatic. And so if that's the argument, then why are all these cops suddenly being given AR-15s to combat this? I mean, you see arguments all the time
Have
about,
you
well,
ever
don't
shot
know
an
guns.
AR-15?
No, I've shot
Here's something that-
M16.
Okay, but it's the same weapon.
Yeah,
really,
essentially,
okay?
yeah.
And here's something that if you haven't handled the weapon, that you need to know in order to understand other people's arguments. Shooting an AR-15 is fun as fuck. It truly is. It is one of those experiences like altering your consciousness or having sex. It is a catharsis. It is a feeling of power. It is an awesome feeling. And I think that people on the left who haven't held a gun and haven't known that truth really need to know that, because what's going on here is there are all these people who are being unreasonable about giving up this small personal joy that they have, and that's all it is. It's like riding a motorcycle. It's an experience. It's an experience that either makes you feel powerful or a It's fucking awesome. It is great to do, and these people just don't want to give up that joy in their life. I don't know how you live with yourself, though, that you wouldn't give up a small pleasure to save other humans. That's where the chasm
course-
is for me.
And of course, they can't admit that's what it is.
Right.
They have to say it's about rights and about safety,
And
because you
that's
can't
just
just say it's
horseshit.
so much fun.
Yeah.
So
I respect that so much more. If anyone's like, "Oh, it's fucking great,"
it will.
I'd be like, "Cool, that's great, man."
Once again, I seem to be tasked with the truth of the matters. I do this everywhere I go, where I'm like, "Why is nobody just saying the truth?" It's fun as fuck. If you have never held one, I recommend that you do. It will help you understand
Just
the other
not
side.
in a school.
Well, so much
Oh,
of this
no.
is
Certainly not. No, I
That's
would
much
never.
better.
so much of this is fetishism.
I don't want you to fuck or shoot the children. That is my own personal. I'm a
If you
good one.
take anything
one of the
away
good
today,
How about
just
this?
don't fuck or shoot
Well,
children.
how about
Yes.
this? How about this?
Oh wait, hold on. Our
teachers-
thought is about to be.
How about
amended.
this? The teachers are allowed to fuck any kid that shoots someone.
Are they
All right.
fucking them while they're shooting? This sounds like very difficult.
I don't think
No,
it'll
you have
start
to take
there,
the gun
but
away.
it will get fetishized as time goes on. You know, I've done a lot of podcasts in my day. This is another one.
Nice. Yeah.
I say themed guns for all the teachers.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
So,
see.
the history teacher gets a musket.
Nice.
Librarian gets a silencer.
very nice.
Keep things down.
Yes. Okay.
Theater department, just a prop gun. No,
Oh,
no,
really?
there's
Yes, that's-
no live ammunition.
That's
You
going
gotta,
to
You got to work with it.
Be wise in hindsight. I like
Science teacher gets anything he can build himself.
Right. Yeah, it's just like he's got to
Yeah.
MacGyver the whole thing.
Metal
This
shop.
is what's
just gets a
called the
cannon.
zip gun.
That's it's look, it's
It's madness. Do you know, every day I look at the newspaper on a New York City subway, it reminds me of like Superman when they'd have that gag paper. Dog bites, man bites dog, you know, that's what the newspaper has become. It is like God is in an absurdist phase.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's been the same joke that every comic kind of stumbled upon. It's like
Which is-
we're living in the 9th season of a bad show that ran out of ideas. Because everything that's happened in the
How
last
have I
2
not
years-
heard this horseshit?
You've heard that, yeah.
Heard it.
But like
Okay.
it's this weird thing. Like I've said that like before it became like a popular one. My version of it was every Trump speech is like watching the after credits scene in a sequel to Butterfly Effect, and that's how you find out that they fucked up really bad,
Right.
and that's that they ruined everything trying to make the world better, and now Trump is president and just talking about how much I'd walk in there and I'd punch that guy in the face.
I can eat bullets.
Yeah, and it's that premise that like because if you wrote this, everyone would have told you you're an idiot and you're a
Correct.
bad writer.
Absolutely.
This
Too
would never happen.
far-fetched.
Yeah,
Right.
it's ridiculous.
Who is this jackass you've put me in contact with?
We're living in a South Park episode.
We really, truly are. It's fucking bizarre. I used to be the crazy person. Everybody has surpassed me. I used to be the crazy person.
Well,
I am fucking pretty reasonable in
ask you
comparison
this.
these days.
We're people in comedy. Has anyone that you know who ended up becoming a staunch Trump supporter surprised you? Has
Yes.
it been anyone that you did not see? Because with me,
Yes.
every single Trump supporter was someone I saw it coming.
I
They were already
have a
someone I
black
was
friend that surprised the shit out of me. That voted for Trump and continues to support him.
Surprises me you have a black friend.
Oh, that old gag. I have a black friend who supported Trump, and that surprised the shit out of me.
Yeah,
'Cause
that's
I don't
disappointing.
understand how black people don't find it personally offensive.
I know gay Trump supporters, but that's because they're the kind of people who are like, I'm more white than gay. Those kind of gay guys, where it's just like I don't care how much I was persecuted.
You really need to have a camera on Marissa during the show.
Oh, there is. There is.
Oh, okay. Because the looks of horror you have on a regular basis are part of the show that I think really needs to be pointed out. You say things that you're just totally fearless, and I recommend you continue this. But while you're saying them, I feel myself compelled to look over at Marissa, and each time I can read Marissa's feelings. Like if we were talking about poker earlier, she would be an easy person to play against with him at the
I
table.
never play poker. Like literally every thought in my head is always on my face. I can't play poker.
That is, though, the quality of a good person.
The fact that I can't
It's a
disguise my
learned
face.
behavior to disguise your feelings and emotions.
Am I horrifying you, Marissa?
You're horrifying everybody, yes, but it's great for the show. Carry on.
Welcome to Hot Take with Dave and Marissa.
Yeah.
I will find a way.
You can't change the station. He's on medication.
I don't remember what we were talking about, but it was
Oh,
fun.
you had gay.
Yeah, more white than gay.
Yeah.
More white
Yeah,
gang.
we all know those guys.
Wow, that was seamless.
The people
Nicely
who,
done.
It's the gay guys you
Eh.
know who seem to have really
I
strong opinions about
really-
feminism, and it's like, when do you even run into this?
I like to get together with my friends and qualify them like that. Be like, look, I want you to understand, I perceive you as more of your color than your sexual orientation. I want you to understand how I pigeonhole you. You are more white than gay.
Now, the black guy you know who loves Trump, did he hate Obama?
Yes. Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Because that's the biggest
Very-
correlation.
Yeah.
The best
Very, very
predictor
odd,
of liking
yes.
Trump is hating Obama. It was-
Correct. But there's also, he's got the added, he's a veteran as well, which once you've seen your friends killed next to you, that can really change the way you view things.
what branch?
I think Army,
Okay.
and I know that man saw a great deal of combat, which
I only asked because I recently found out that black men in the Marines are called splibs. I think that's the word. I was looking up. I did a game on another
Carry
radio
on,
show
Yeah,
splibs.
where it
splibs.
was
Sounds
ethnic
racist as
slur.
fuck, but let's
I did a
keep
game
going.
called Ethnic Slur or Star Wars Species, and and I think it was splib or squidge. I think it was splib, but the idea was that it was listed as a non-offensive term for a black man in the Marines. And I remember thinking, who's the one who's
Not
decided
offended.
it's non-offensive?
what
did
is
they-
the acronym? They're
I don't
always
know.
acronyms.
I do not know, actually.
That's what they are with those fucking military.
It's actually a really good
fucks.
game because there's just so many Star Wars species that it's really hard. For example, gank. There's ganks. Mm-hmm. And I know that must be a slur for some people in our world too.
No,
Yeah.
no.
But ganks.
Gank was slang for stealing.
Well, yeah.
You could
yeah.
gank shit.
In Star Wars, it's a murderous race of cyborg people.
Oh, look at that.
I've got splib, a black person who opposes discrimination but will not challenge the status quo.
What? Is that what it says it is?
That's something. Yeah.
Maybe I said it wrong because I had the list. It's definitely.
I mean, you could turn anything into
No,
a
I'm
slur.
probably wrong, but it might be the same one. I thought that was
Right,
it,
you
yeah.
gooby.
Whoa, hey. It's gotten mad offensive up in here.
like-
in keeping with Marissa's read, I should sue everybody. I'm going to sue everybody in
Just sue the shit out
here.
of
I'm going to
everyone.
sue everyone.
Uh,
You'll be hearing from my attorney. He's also Donald Trump's physician. You may recognize him.
I like how Trump also like. Does he when he hires a lawyer? Does he make sure they have some kind of horrible secret? Because it's like
Yes.
it seems like he
Yes.
doesn't want a lawyer unless it's the kind of guy who's just like, unless it's the kind of guy who like threatens to fight a bartender when they cut him off.
I think like he
he likes classless people.
Yeah, well,
Yes,
he loves classless people, but I
true.
think like any lawyer that's going to take him on is going to be like basically bottom of the barrel because he's already notorious for not paying his bills, and like lawyers do nothing but bill you, so they kind of have to like kind of just like take a shot in the dark that like hopefully he might pay me, but like I can just say I'm Donald Trump's lawyer
Correct.
and maybe that will get me some clients. Like I think that they're just basically a firm holding
It's
on
pro
by-
bono work
Yeah.
in order to attract
A name.
people.
Business,
And
yeah.
I think that works, and I think that you're right. I think that the cachet there is I was the president's attorney, and you do that work. You don't even think about getting paid. In fact, we have, what was that lawyer who said he paid 130 G's out of his own pocket? to
Cohen, right? Yeah.
What fucking lawyer on the planet is like, you know what? I got your fine. It could be $400. You hire somebody to go to traffic court with you. You're 130 G's. He just took it out of his pocket.
Yeah.
Again, we get back to the idea that
I'm
these
sure Mueller
lies are
did not
so
believe.
big. You think?
I do not believe he really gave. I'm 100% sure that money eventually came from Trump, and that Cohen
Well,
is just
I
being
think
a good
that
lawyer.
it may
Yeah.
actually be a non-linear thing, like you're saying, $130,000 investment to a man who can pardon you.
Right.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
but pardon
Risk
you for the
versus
crimes you
reward.
committed for
For
him.
him.
Yes, but then again,
That's the kind of
you
dick
think
Trump
he's-
is. He's like, don't worry, I'm going to give you the biggest favor you ever had. I'm going to make sure you don't go to jail for the things I made you do.
Yes.
I'm that great a person.
but it's also implied that, you know, we're part of this criminal conspiracy together. If I have a problem, you have a problem. We're in this together. You ever, like, if you're doing some shit wrong with people, they act like you have been family for 50, for
yeah.
100 years, and nothing is going to rip that bond apart. And then people get caught doing shit and they just snitch.
Right.
That's the reality of
And
things.
that's-
People want to talk this gangster shit, but, you know, sooner or later you end up someplace with the consequences and you try to make the best deal for you.
And that when people-
See all of Trump's cabinet thus far.
Well, that's the thing with Trump is like people talk about him getting away with all this, and I'm like, which of these people do you think are going to go to jail for him?
Right.
You think Jared would go to jail for him?
Yes, I do. I do. But
don't
I
think
don't think
Jared's
that Jared's
father is-
really will be going to jail for him. He'll be going to jail for his wife. You know, you can't fucking go home. What are you going to do?
Okay, what about Manafort or
Manafort is in house arrest. Manafort
Yeah.
is
I
in
don't
a
have
lot of
my
guy-
own thoughts, but he gets very excited. No, I'm being a penis. I didn't actually have my own thoughts on that one. Go ahead.
No, I mean, Manafort's already pled guilty, and Manafort's either going to turn over a lot of evidence or he's going to pay the price. And this is playing out exactly like a mafia trial.
It truly is, yes. They're just flipping people
And-
up the line.
Yeah, and Trump never thought twice about the idea of maybe I shouldn't surround myself with people who would eat their mother to survive.
Well,
funny
this whole...
thing-
Sorry.
No, go on.
This whole thing is rather unlikely, though. He didn't believe he'd be here. Nobody thought he'd be here.
No.
This whole thing playing out, in actuality, is shocking to the man who is now the leader of the free world.
And he didn't cover his ass like a person who thought he would get there either.
Right.
No, and
Because he
then-
thought he was just going to start a TV network after the whole election. He
Right.
thought he was going to lose, and then he was going to like spin off with his own TV network, and it was going to be
Like
the
Trump
new Fox.
TV,
Yeah, it was going to be
right.
like Trump TV. Was going to be kind of like a new, like alt-right kind
Shit
of
fountain.
Fox. Yeah.
He just wanted to take advantage of the general hatred and chaos in the country
Correct.
and make money off it. He
Right.
just saw it as
That's
an
right.
opportunity.
And then now, you know, he won, which is going to kind of fuck up his plan.
a bad 80s film. See what happens
Yeah.
when a famous millionaire down on his luck tricks a whole country into voting for him.
Yeah.
But Donald!
You would
But that's
never
like the
sell
most-
the script.
Yeah.
Right.
No, you'd be laughed the fuck out of an office.
There's
Yeah,
that
we-
Robin Williams movie
as a
There's-
comedian who runs for office.
Yeah.
And there's a Chris Rock movie.
Oh,
And
right.
now it's
Right.
actually happening in Italy. There's a
It
comedian,
happened.
Grillo.
Correct.
Yeah.
But he has turned over the movement, the 5-star movement, to other people. He is not at the forefront of it. But that movement has gotten very problematic as well. That is, they're taking on fascist overtones.
Yeah, because that's what happens when you have general, broad populism.
Well-
You say, what do people like? Oh, they like hating immigrants. Okay.
Right. Well, also, let's look at this. You made the statement earlier, and I agree with it. We are people in comedy. You want one of our fucking friends running this country? I mean, let's think about the people in comedy. The average person you go on a road gig with, or you see at the comedy club here in Manhattan. 99% of them, I would leave a fucking cat with these people.
Our best.
I mean, and
The best one we had was Al Franken. He was the cleanest one we had.
that's true. Yeah.
He was our
You have a
Harvey
point.
Dent, and he got taken down.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you think about people that you're not even comfortable letting you drive to Poughkeepsie.
Right.
Right.
And
I'll meet you there. There is a train. Yeah, and I'm not gonna bother backpedaling. Like, obviously, there are wonderful people doing comedy, but I don't want them fucking being president.
Yeah, I want you to be president maybe if, like, that's what you wanted to do all your life. And you want to, like, dedicate yourself to something. No one's first job should be in the goddamn White House. That's why people... Yeah,
Here's part of the thought of America: the best and the brightest compete in a free market, and the cream rises to the top. That was always the ideal, right? Truth, justice, and the American way. Superman. They can't even say that shit anymore with a straight face. They don't say truth, justice, and the American way. The American way is through the rectum.
Yeah.
for the rest of the free world.
What if you had a middle of the road, career politician Republican, and then
Made
someone
him
like Oprah
Okay.
against him?
Yes.
Would you blindly vote for your side?
Yes, I would
Yeah.
actually. It is though they have made things so cartoonishly clear. Like on this side, we want to keep all our money and allow people to sell guns to murderers.
Yeah.
And on this side, we're against them taking food stamps and sending people food they won't eat.
I'll say- yeah, I
Like,
agree with
fucking
you.
so black and white and insane. But
Yeah.
it's also, I think, I'll make a quick point and then. It needs to be said that this is happening around the world. If
Yeah.
you look at Brexit, if you look where the Italian
Five-star
election is
party,
going,
yeah.
Sergio
It's scary.
Berlusconi is the one that they're
It's-
saying is the kingmaker in this.
Right.
Whoever he supports.
Terrifying that Berlusconi has this kind of power in Italy in 2018.
And Berlusconi is the forerunner to Trump. Berlusconi is a man who
Exactly
made
like him.
his fortune
He's another
and
buddy
his
of
fame
Putin.
through reality television, and then parlayed that into being in charge of a country.
Right.
Yeah, and here's what I would say about the Oprah question.
If I may,
sorry,
quickly,
please.
there is a wonderful documentary called Videocracy about the subject that I would recommend people see. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
What I was going to say is I would vote against Oprah, anyone in a primary, in a Democratic primary.
gave
I
you
would
a car.
absolutely
Yeah.
vote against her with anyone. I don't want politicians to just be celebrities. But if it was against a moderate Republican, it would be a decision I made directly about the actual issues. If it was Romney versus Oprah, I would actually think about that. I would really look at it, but I would still vote for the issues I care about. Here's the thing, though. Oprah is, of course, not the liberal version of Trump.
No.
No.
That
no,
would
that's
be like
not
if the
point of my
fat
question.
Jewish was running for president. If the fat Jew was running
Right.
against Romney, then I think I might have to vote against my issues
Right.
just to have someone I think deserves to have their finger on the button.
I'm definitely just trying to boil down the idea of experience in politics alone.
If Kanye
Yeah.
West actually got the Democratic nomination, I would vote for Jeb Bush against him, if that answers
Right.
the question.
Yeah, Kanye.
Yes, but-
Kanye's a little too far.
Kanye's mentally ill.
He is. He's not okay.
I mean, because I kind of thought that if it went to, like, let's say Bernie and Kasich, I was kind of contemplating Kasich, to be honest, because like I just kind of felt like Bernie was just like the opposite side of the Trump coin, and so like it didn't boil down that way, but I did definitely have that like coming to Jesus moment with myself, like what happens if this ends up being who our candidates are.
Well, that's interesting. I definitely never put Bernie in that category of so far, off the rails that he is the antithesis of Trump or he's the equal side on that.
He's certainly a career government person, though. He's someone who like, knows what he's doing. Yeah.
And but I think what Trump has proven to me is that you can just be, just have ideologies and that's it. You could just be an ideologue and the country will still run. The country just moves. It's a pretty sophisticated government that doesn't need this leader with a vision. He has zero vision for the country. He has no plans. He is being manipulated by whoever speaks to him last, which is frightening. But it leans me in the direction of voting for an Oprah. Not a Kanye, probably, but, but someone who I can at least agree with ideologically, so that when people come into their office and say we should do this, this, and that, you go, well, I don't really believe in that.
But don't you think that his vision is just kind of like isolationism? And,
yes.
I think that he does have a vision, and I think he is moving us to his vision, which, granted, I don't know who the hand up his ass is, but somebody is guiding him to have this very, anti-immigration.
It's everything that I believed when I was 9. Well, his vision is an aggressive child. And that's what Putin is. It's
a dog whistle. We're talking about this while they rob the hen house.
Right.
Yeah. We're talking about what his vision is while people get government contracts, while he makes deals, while he changes tariffs. And really, that's the goal here. The goal is, at the end of the day, the Trump family walks away with as much as they can and with as little liability as possible.
Well, I have hope.
And if I may, Oprah is a very, very different candidate than just about anybody else that the left could bring in that she spoke to our country 1 hour a day for 20 years.
Right.
And during that time, she handled herself with not only ethically, but thoughtfully and in a way that, and this is a trick of television or radio, in a way that I feel a kinship towards Oprah. Like, I know Oprah. Like, I can trust Oprah. Like, Oprah is a person I have a read on as a human being. That's not the truth. I know that intellectually, but I feel as though Oprah is my homegirl that I could leave in my house and I get a pretty good idea what she's going to do. So because of that, and it's a much more extended trick. That's the same trick that Trump played on America. You know me from The Apprentice, and I make these great meetings, and it's a trick. With Oprah, it is also a trick of the mind. However, I feel like it's a much more rational conclusion that this is the person she purports herself to be.
Yeah, I don't think she's as malignant. She's definitely not as malignant as Trump. And if it was Trump versus Oprah, I would have to go Oprah. But at the same time, I still find Oprah to be somewhat problematic because, like, when her show started in, like, the 80s, like, she was basically kind of like
Fat.
she was like basically kind of like a Springer type, and like she just had a parade of incest survivors and battered women, and she didn't give them any support until really some of her former guests started killing themselves, and then she kind of like brought in Dr. Phil to have that psychological support on the back end. And now people are finding out that Dr. Phil is like giving alcohol and drugs to his guests before they get on air.
What a wonderful host.
I didn't get offered anything before I came onto this show.
To be clear,
I got a bottle of water.
We gave you cookies.
I would vote for I would vote for Steve Wilco if he was running against Trump. Steve was the Springer bodyguard. Yeah.
Steve. Yeah. Well, there is a certain segment of the population that are Trump voters that would be crossover Steve voters.
That's
be like,
true.
This guy's awesome. No, if some goes down, it's take care of him.
Steve would have definitely gone into that school.
Steve would have gone into that school. Yeah. But then again, if Steve gets shot, is that a real loss to America? There are many more Steves to break up fights between skanks. Trust me on this one.
Yeah, we.
Oh, on that note, I feel like we should all sing "America the Beautiful."
It is a good game. Just thinking of who would you still vote for Trump against?
Yeah,
because I can't think of who it is. I know, like I'm the one I go to is, names that come up of former politicians, Al Sharpton, in a second. In a second, I
You
vote
would
for Al
vote
Sharpton.
for Al Sharpton?
Against
yeah.
Trump?
Yeah.
Against Trump?
If he was my
Yeah.
only choice against Trump,
Good
yes.
Yeah.
Lord. Are you
I'm
kidding
making-
me?
I'm
That's
making a
for
point.
me. I
I would
could
vote
flip
for-
a coin.
okay.
I would not.
I would vote for Tawana Brawley if she was running against Trump. No one knows Tawana Brawley?
Oh,
Yes, I know.
I do know who you're talking about, but seriously, if you were to find an equivalent for me of Trump, it would be
No, you're right. The
what
only-
we have are two racial snake oil salesmen.
you would get a few extra good things out of
Racial
Sharpton.
hucksters, people
Yeah, no,
who
he is.
find the margin and then use it as a way to distance one another. I find Al Sharpton equally distasteful as I do Donald Trump.
I respect
now,
that. At least
if
we wouldn't
you
lose abortion.
if we really are talking about how to fix this country, you take Donald Trump and you take Al Sharpton and you put them in a cell together for 1 year and you make it pay-per-view. And all that money goes to taxes. You just have a 24-hour feed of them being stuck in a 5x8 room together.
But at least we know Sharpton is the puppet of the FBI. Like, Trump is the puppet of Putin. Like, Sharpton has been working with the FBI for, like, decades.
Well, Sharpton was a rat. You mean he was a snitch for like other people, but it's not
Correct.
like, I don't think he's been
During
doing
his
that for a
Sergio
while.
But, like-
Tacchini cowboy hat phase, where he was buying kilos of cocaine at Katz's, which I want to thank him. That alliterates nicely. Kilos of cocaine at Katz's, ladies and gentlemen.
I just think, like, my point is that for me, the difference between, I mean, other than the fact that I'm black, because Dave likes to point it out.
Are you?
But
It's radio. They don't know unless I
They
say
don't know.
it.
They got to be reminded.
They-
Top
we
of the
have
hour, every hour.
cameras.
Yes.
It's 8:07. This is still black.
Yeah,
And-
I'm still black. We're still here. But like, I guess like my whole point is that like we know that he's not necessarily like in bed with a foreign government. Like is like for me that would be my big push that I would go Sharpton.
Yeah.
Although like you know I don't necessarily agree with.
I don't like him either.
You know.
I just think he'd still be a better president.
Yeah, I always think about the
Do you
duties
think
of
that
the
Sharpton
president.
would be a better president than Trump?
What do you think are the duties of the president? Like that matter the most? You know, he is the public figure of our country. He represents us around the world, and Trump is the worst at those particular things. He's actually the worst that I could even imagine.
I think that Sharpton is, a dirtbag in the way you're saying, but I don't think he's mentally ill. I don't think he's dangerous. like
That's
Trump
fair
is.
point.
Right.
I think that's the difference.
Fair
I think
point.
Sharpton, if he became president, every day he'd be like, "Man, I really gotta do this right. I gotta
Yeah.
keep my head on my shoulders and really do it right and put on a good and look respectable." And I think he would try.
Jesus,
in a way
why
that
am I
Trump
always in
never
these
would.
situations?
I don't like him either. I'm just saying. Compared
Yeah,
to
I
Trump.
know, but I've just watched everybody be like, "Oh yeah, all right, I trust Reverend Al Sharpton." You're all fucking being played. Everyone.
Comparatively.
So somebody needs to say that. Here I am. Let's carry on.
Let me be fair. Also, I would also vote for Ben Affleck in a three-way
Yeah.
between those people.
I would vote
I'd
for a
for
three-way.
Ben.
yeah.
I would probably vote for El Chapo before I'd vote for Trump.
Ooh,
Wow.
I'm gonna say
actually-
no.
holy cow.
Well,
See, that's a good one. That's more of.
I'll tell you what, he'll solve the opioid crisis because there will be tons of pure cocaine. Nobody will be bothering.
You know what
with
though?
opioids
I would vote for
anymore.
El Chapo versus Trump, but not.
This
I would not.
I would not vote for El Chapo.
This
But
has
I would-
become
This is
like
nuts.
the sports talk radio of politics. You got 1945. You got Ike fist fighting Trump. Who do you got winning this one? This has gone completely off the rails. Ike would knock Trump out. That's for certain. I'm sorry.
I was gonna
I
say-
like
Joey's
that
getting
voice.
upset.
I would vote
Somebody
for El
get him an
Chapo,
AR-15.
but I would vote for Trump if he was running against Escobar. So I'll give him
Pound
that.
for pound, Pablo Escobar is probably the best hybrid drug dealer. Actually, Pablo Escobar did want to be president
of
that's right, of Colombia.
Colombia.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's. I think.
How
he'd
scary
be,
is that?
I think he would be a bad president,
Do you?
Pablo Escobar.
He
Personally,
was what is he going to do that he wasn't doing as a drug dealer? He's knocking planes out of the sky as a drug dealer.
Yeah, Trump actually bested him in that regard. Trump did what Pablo could not do.
Which is?
Become president, of the
Yeah.
country.
as a thug.
As
Yeah.
a thug, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
in a certain way, because he wasn't quite the man Pablo Escobar was. Pablo Escobar was all balls. Pablo Escobar was out in the street committing crimes, doing real shit, and people were afraid to come get him. He was the he
good.
was the myth that Trump would like to be. Pablo Escobar is the guy
Right.
who does walk in when somebody's shooting an AR-15. Like,
Right, that's
you know,
true. Yeah.
he's the myth that he would that Trump would like to be. And then again, you know, he spent his life moving packages of fucking drugs that killed a lot
Right.
of people.
How has Trump helped the country most, in your opinion?
I don't believe he has helped the country in a single way
There's
at
not
all.
There's
I
not a
think
metric that you can go by that you're like, oh, this
I'm sure there is one, but I'm just so
curious.
I view him so fucking negatively. Like
Yeah.
what you said about him being the absolute worst representation of us around the world. I feel like the president, right? His job is like that of a general manager. When some shit goes down, people who are beneath him really handle it, right?
Right.
But he comes out and he says, "Hey, everybody, I want to apologize for the shit that happened. I'm the one in charge. It's up to me."
But he
has
never apologizes.
not only does he
Right.
not apologize, he has. If you think of America as a stock, he has cost us value in the
Right.
stock. He has irreparably harmed our brand, our way of life for years and generations to come. And it is absolutely fucking mind-numbing that I have to talk reasonable people around me to this point. We're like, no, you know, we're really respected around the world.
Oh my
No,
God.
Jesus
It's
Christ.
the exact opposite. We are the laughing stock
They,
of the
they,
world.
Yeah.
they thought that Obama made us lose respect. Obama made the whole country be like, "Oh, you're catching up."
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what I would say, like, I don't think that he's done any good for the country, but I think that for everyday people, as divisive as he is, and he's put us all in separate. He's kind of broken us down the middle into two camps. But I feel like each camp has found camaraderie within their own camp, which I don't think we necessarily had during Obama, because like with Obama, like we all were just like, oh yeah, like it's Obama, everything is cool. And like, you know, the right was losing their shit because like, oh my God, a black man in the press, like in the White House. But like, I think the left was just kind of like, oh, I'm like, everything's good. Like, you know, like we're progressive. And like now I think that people that you didn't necessarily think you had so much in common with, you're just like finding like common ground. Like, all right, listen, when they start putting us in the camps, let's like all like get together.
We're all in a basement being like, I think this hurricane is bringing us together.
Yeah.
Like that's,
Yeah.
they're like, let's look at the bright side of this,
It's
everybody.
like we're telling scary stories. There's one can of Spam left.
I'm eating his half cookie.
Okay. You can take the rest of them.
I think Grandpa, I think Grandpa,
Did I skeeve you out?
No, it was his
It's
cookie.
his half cookie
Yeah.
going in? Wow, you people are
I want to
weird.
make a point that Rob ate half of a cookie,
And
put
put-
it
And then
back
put it right into the whole
sleeve,
container.
Put it back in the sleeve?
like
Yeah,
a
you
I would
did.
like to
lunatic.
point out that I do not mind at all. These are excellent.
So you were
cookies.
unconscious of that. I thought that was a power move.
Yeah, I thought he
you
was just going
I'm
to take
so
the whole sleeve of
sorry.
He
cookies.
took half a cookie and put it
Oh
back
my
in the
God,
top of the
how did-
sleeve, and all of us stopped eating the cookies and thought, "Wow, Rob
Is
an
just
alpha."
out here.
Pissed all over these
Rob
He's
is-
like, he just like jizzed
Rob
on
is
my
the,
cookies.
is the top dog here, apparently.
And here's
sorry.
a wonderful metaphor for America. While you discuss it, I eat your cookies. I have been eating your cookies the entire time.
Because
you're
Rob's
talking.
been dog
milkshake.
whistling us
That's
while
correct.
Joey's eating the cookies.
If you asked a Republican what Trump's contribution would, they would say, well, before he was president, commerce. And the thing is, you can't even give him credit for that because of his reputation for stiffing people. He has a reputation for causing the
you
reverse
know-
of people losing money and not getting paid for the work they do.
What a fucking scumbag! Like all these guys who voted for him, that like guys that I grew up with in Brooklyn who talk this shit about, he's a real man. He's doing this for us. I'm like, you're a fucking idiot. The work that you do, putting in tiles or putting down carpet, this is a guy who has the means to pay you to honor your work, and he fucks every one of these people, not because they've done something wrong, not because he's unhappy with their work, but because overall, as a mathematical formula, it's better to fuck people. At the end of the day, you get more by fucking people. And I find that not only distasteful, I not only find it repugnant personally, I find it to be un-American. And that is the crux of my frustration with the people around me, that he is so obviously, blatantly un-American, the antithesis of the qualities that I was told were American. He is obviously and overwhelmingly on the side of wrong at all times. And I feel as though I'm having one of these dreams where the people around me can't see what I see. And I find it helpful to boil this all down to a kind of schoolyard scenario, which is, if we're all in a schoolyard together and we elect this guy, do you feel safer? No, I don't. He's such a fucking common con man
the
that
cowardice.
the average New Yorker would hear him talking for 30 seconds on a subway and turn up their iPhone.
Right.
The cowardice behind people who pretend that they're okay with this. I mean, you say to these people, well, he stole from his charity. There are two $20,000 paintings that he paid for with money that people thought they were giving to a charity. You know what their answer is to that? Tell that to anyone and then ask them, respond to that without using the words Hillary Clinton. They will throw a fucking they will lose their minds. Their heads will explode and they'll say, well, she stole from her charity. Are you sure of that? Or are you comparing one person who was proven in court to be doing something with another thing that you heard Rush Limbaugh make up off the top of his head from process of elimination?
Those who choose not to see are more blind than those who cannot. And that is what's going on here in America. There is a big okie doke. People are willing to just fucking sell out their country in order to have some more money or a rifle in their house. And it breaks my heart. This is a sad thing to say and mean. I'm glad my father isn't alive to see this because he fought for this country. And the people who's, in a position of power in our government have all sold us out, obviously and openly. And it's just kind of fucking shocking to me that am I the canary in the coal mine? I was kicked out of high school.
Yeah.
I was then kicked out of the college afterwards. I went into the topless bar business, and after that, I ran high-end pool halls.
You should be a Trump supporter.
Right, on paper, I'm a fucking idiot. But if I'm the canary in the coal mine, right, am I? No, it's not that I'm so smart I figured it out. It's that smart people are complicit and are allowing it to go on.
Right. What's your worst case Trump scenario?
Worst case?
Yeah, that's that you legitimately fear at night when you go to bed.
I know that
they
had floated the idea of not holding elections if there were a terrorist attack. Which, if you look at the history of any government, you can find some sort of false flag operation. And I don't go in for that overall. I don't spend a lot of time on conspiracy theories.
No,
I think
but that's
that
a great one.
Nobody has to hide a conspiracy anymore. They can just do it openly, and people are too bought off with fucking cell phones and trying to get home to microwave food that they're okay with you fucking them.
My answer to that is
you don't have to to it. Sorry.
And I'm sure.
Yeah. Now I'm ready to eat the rich motherfucker.
Give me my AR-15. I'm gonna go to shoot up a private school.
I didn't want to do it. I promise you, I had no choice. The only option was nuclear war.
We gotta figure out what the hell is going on.
And he's going to start a nuclear war because of Robert Mueller.
Yes.
That he is going to do something so desperate and so dangerous when he no longer sees he has anything left to lose.
Right.
And I don't see anything about him that says he wouldn't do it. He's inching towards a nuclear war. He's constantly dropping hints. He at the State of the Union, he thought he was going to get an applause break when he said, "There may be a day when we don't need nuclear weapons, but today is not that day."
Ugh.
And he stood there waiting for the applause that did not come. And we saw this is how much he is aligning his emotional sense of well-being with being a man who has nuclear weapons.
About 2.5 months ago, I nearly died from a heart attack, and I pray that it does happen to this guy.
He's a walking widowmaker.
I have spent time thinking, wouldn't it be great to just get up tomorrow and be like, President dead, has heart attack from all the shitty things he's done to people.
Seriously, when
What
I was
newspaper
watching,
ran
I would
with
like
that-
a doctor to say,
The HuffPost would say that.
It turns out that the plaque in his lower anterior descending was due to all the shitty scumbaggery he was involved in.
When I was watching the State of the Union, every time I watched Obama's State of the Union, I would watch and be afraid because I'm I don't want to look because if I look, oh my God, what if something happens to Obama? And watching this when I'm like, oh my God, what if I watch this and nothing happens to him during the speech?
I don't want him to die.
No.
I want him to live long enough to see Barron change his name.
Wow.
That's my true
You are a
hope.
sadist.
That is my true hope, that he lives long enough to see his son change his name to Morty Smith.
And once again, do I have to be the one? What's wrong with that kid? Something is going on with that child. The lights are on, but nobody's home.
We don't know
He's
that.
the
I don't
most.
pay enough attention.
He's the most likable child because his eyes are vacant. What
I'm
the hell kind
assuming
of family?
Some
He probably
sort
rec-
of spectrum.
My assumption is simply that he knows what a douchebag his dad is, and every time the camera's on him, he's like, I can't believe I have to be
That's
seen
the
How
as.
first-
old is Baron?
That's the
Like
first bit of
11 or
optimism
12,
we've
something
had
like
out
that.
of you.
We don't know anything about
It's too
this
young
kid.
for me
I
to
don't,
be, yeah.
you know. It's not like Ivanka,
Oh,
who is,
I know enough.
sold her fucking soul.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And that tree's been putting it in this country's ass.
Look, Trump's a bad person, and look, Tiffany might be decent for all we know. I don't know. We have the fact that we
Tiffany.
don't see her very. Tiffany Trump.
I didn't know there was one.
Yeah, exactly. Good for her.
Yeah,
Well, because
yeah.
she's Marla's
She's
kid.
like that.
Yeah.
She's like that Osborne daughter. There was one daughter
Yeah, who wouldn't be on Amy? Who
Right.
wouldn't be on camera?
who I understand is very attractive.
Yeah, she's cute. She didn't want. Good for her. It was
Yeah.
like, no, I don't want to be on the show.
God
Just
bless
don't
her.
let me on. Don't let me on camera. I'm still gonna hang out in
Yes.
my house. But yeah, I mean, we know Eric and Don are absolute dog shit human beings. But Ivanka
Oh my
is
goodness.
worse
The strong language.
Because Ivanka is, she's trying to be like, I'm a good person, and I'm a smart professional.
No.
And and how dare you ask
don't
me if my
believe-
daddy hurt those women? How could you
Yeah.
dare ask me that? Well, you're also a
White
high
House
level.
advisor.
How are you also?
The horror.
That's why you don't hire your daughter to be in these jobs, because then the person whose job it would be to talk about this gets to say, well, I don't have to talk about that because I'm his daughter.
Right. Well, I don't believe you. I think that once again you're giving people the benefit of the doubt in that you think they're saying things that aren't completely disingenuous just to further their agenda. You believe that there might actually be a kernel of goodness in them that I refuse to see or don't see. I don't know which it is. I'm willing to accept that I'm just too close-minded. A friend of mine did say to me, if Trump got up tomorrow and decided to be a good person, the left would just figure out, this it would report it as this is some sort of bullshit that's going on we can't trust. And I agree with
Yeah,
that, but
Nicholas
that's
Cruz tomorrow was a good person. Would that make everything okay?
all right. That's a false equivalent.
Okay.
What we're dealing with here, if Trump got up tomorrow and had some sort of, let's say he does have the heart attack, right?
Yeah.
And it's that moment where he says, I've gotten it all wrong. 70 years, I'm going to be the best president, and I'm going to consider everybody. I would be like, what the fuck? I do not trust this. Whatever the fuck is going on, it's not, I could not trust him. He is just harmed.
You just figured it's a new con.
Absolutely right, but it's
Yeah.
a conditioned response to the fact that the man's been a con man his whole life.
Right.
So there is an argument too. If he has done something good, I wouldn't know because my mind ain't open to it.
Well, he's set a precedent. Yeah.
I still believe there's. 'Cause you're going for straight evil. I'm still play the dumb card. I think that he this operation is just over his head, and that the people around him are much smarter, move much faster, and unfortunately, so is Russia. Like Putin is far smarter and far more adept at manipulating our country than Trump is able to, and even right down to DACA. I mean, he was ambivalent about that for some time, and that's what I referred to earlier when the last person to speak to him is what his opinion is. And he doesn't know. He doesn't know anything about policy. He doesn't know anything about running a country, which is fine. I get why he doesn't. But then he has no backbone. That's my point of the vision, and he's being manipulated by. It's like the George W. Bush. The hell is his vice president?
Oh, Cheney.
Cheney. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was like the Bush Cheney thing, but
Darth
just far,
Vader.
just so much worse. Like if Cheney were vice. Oh my God. You know what I mean? He's
like
being
if-
manipulated by.
It's it's exactly
everyone
like
he surrounds
that
himself
if Bush had never stopped doing cocaine.
If Bush never stopped
If
doing
Bush had been doing cocaine from his
college Bush.
20s up until the day he was elected, that would be a little bit closer to what we're dealing with. Yeah.
Right.
Once
So
again, we're
I'm-
back to
you're-
Little Bump.
I'm team stupid. You're
Little
team
pump.
evil. Yeah.
Well, I think that those two truths can exist simultaneously.
actually,
I think
I
there are
agree with you.
times where what he's doing is guile, and
Yeah.
then other times where he's the sucker.
Well, the Game of Thrones line. We've had idiot kings
right.
and we've had evil kings, but we've never had an idiot evil king, an evil idiot king. Whereas with Bush, we were like, look, the guy's not the brightest guy, but I believe he wants to do right. He's just in the wrong people's pockets. Nixon was an evil man who was very smart.
Right.
We've never had an evil idiot.
Yeah.
Maybe Warren G. Harding, but not on this level.
Don't get me started
So-
on Harding.
I know.
Now we've ripped open the
before
rage canister.
I know. Before we start going on a Harding tear, we're gonna have to wrap it up. But before we
Whoa,
go, I
that's
know
not right. You should have opened with Harding.
we should have opened with Harding. We should have. But before we go, like, where can everyone see you next? Tell everybody about where they can follow you on social media. I'm gonna
Check
start
out my
with-
website at www.craigslist.misconnections. Yeah, I don't care.
I have no idea when this will be airing, so I don't have anything to
Yeah.
plug.
That's
So-
true. Yeah. So I'll just say this was Rob Ryan, and you can catch me at Rob Ryan Rocks. That's everything. My Twitter, my Instagram, everything.
There you are, yeah.
Good job.
At Joey Gay, and I'll be at Important Comedy Show in the future at Best Comedy Club.
Oh, who books that?
You're already
Important
You're already
person.
on the show.
I'm just gonna quote Christian Finnegan from my roast battle and say, "You can see me doing comedy all over the city under my stage name and others." That was a great joke you had. Dave Cyrus, Cyrus.
Okay, I'm Marissa Smith. You can follow me on Twitter at Marissa Smith and like Blamestorming on our Facebook fan page, Blamestorming. Have a great week, you guys, and we will talk to you soon. Keep eating those cookies.
Hooray!
All right.